Alright guys, how's it going? Part 2. Before I get started on my reservoir, I wanted to go a little more in depth into kind of the relationship between the biofilter which I use and the pots I use. Basically, I mean, you could use, just because I use a hydro tray, 2x4 hydro tray, you don't have to use that. You could use, you can be creative with it if you want to grow bigger plants, use bigger pots and, maybe a more round, kind of small little plastic pond that you find at Home Depot, something like that. There's a bunch of different ways to do this method. You just have to be kind of creative, but the basic method here is, plants generally have, kind of two type of root systems. They have, as far as I understand it, the roots, your major root mass, your root ball that's really kind of stays, the top 12 inches of the soil and, feeds on the fresh organic matter. And then you have your kind of anchor roots or your water roots that dive deep into the soil. I don't know if you can see those roots there, but they kind of dive deep into the soil for search of water, of course, extra nutrients, anything they can find. They're opportunists. But basically the way it works is your feeder roots, as long as they like the soil you've blended, are going to stay, kind of in your pot. And they're going to feed off of that, your good organic soil mix in that pot. Of course, some of those roots are going to chase down. That's one thing that I kind of think separates, not just hydroponics, but this method apart from traditional container soil gardens. Basically, you're not limited to your pot size. Your roots can, go further, amass, a bigger mass of root, and seek out nutrients even further. Basically, the roots will grow down into this gravel and help, clean this filter here. That's what helps, soak up the nutrients. Otherwise you just have an excessive buildup of nutrients in your filter here. It helps suck up your nutrients and gives good life to all that. Okay, I guess basically I do not run my water level very high. I generally try to keep it about an inch. It pools more in the back here because I have more cocoa in it. I'm going to redo this tray to where the bottom 2-3 inches are just pure pea gravel, and then on top of that I'll put the mix of cocoa, pea gravel, might add some perlite, some earthworm castings, different stuff like that. But basically the more, I guess, soft, porous organic matter you have in there, the less drainage you're going to get, the more pooling you're going to get, which you don't really want pooling. You want kind of a dry area on top. Onto the reservoir. I used to have quite a few large koi, fancy goldfish. They would all be sitting here at the top of the water begging for food, giving good face shots, being total sociable fish. But unfortunately, in my opinion, the biggest drawback to aquaponics is if you're not careful, you will kill your fish. I unfortunately did not have a quarantine or another tank set up for my fish to go into when I made a major change to the bed here. I added too much cocoa of a brand of cocoa I've never used before, and it basically, I don't know what was in it, dish soap, something, it killed every single fish in my system, which really sucked because I had a lot of beautiful big koi that I had grown since very small size. Basically, I prefer to use 100-gallon Rubbermaid kind of agricultural livestock feed tank. They're cheap. You can use whatever you want. I would not recommend less than 100 gallons. 100 gallons kind of minimum indoors, unless you want to fill your tank constantly. Outdoors, a lot more evaporation. Kind of go by the standard rule of aquaponics. You need 300 gallons. I have no problems with 100 gallons though indoors. Works real great. Basically my system, I showed you guys the Venturi a little while ago. One cheap 400 gallon hydro pump. Another cheap 400 gallon per hour hydro pump runs my Bloom system, which is on a remote site. Back, if you follow that pipe, you follow the pipe all the way underneath the cabinets. Behind that purple wall, there's a half bath where I do my Bloom system, which I'll do in another video. As far as my reservoir, I do not like the common use, common methods for aquaponics. People just kind of like to lock their fish away in the dark with no substrate in the bottom, no plants, no rocks, no nothing for the fish to hide and be healthy, get sunlight, you know, come out, do what they like to do. You know, I like my fish to be happy and healthy, and they give me happy, healthy water, you know. The fish do, of course, feed these plants, but you know, it's more of just like a benefit to me as far as I'm concerned. It's more of like just a bonus added nitrogen all the way through, and you know, kind of like giving your plants a good ACT, you know, pretty much continuously throughout their existence. You can still use ACT and stuff like that. Any of the you know, common tea methods, kelp, stuff like that. But I prefer, you know, put plants in. Sometimes that's hard. Koi especially will uproot pretty much anything that's not a big hardy plant. It can root well into the substrate. I don't know if you guys can see this. The water is dark. It's stained by tannins from the peat moss and the coconut chore. Some people pay high dollar at fish stores for that, you know, bottled concentrate bottles of tannin. Basically it's just you know, an extract from pretty much any decomposed organic matter, I guess you would say. Or but yeah, I like my fish to be healthy. Pretty much like I was saying earlier, I mean, you can add more aeration to the tray. I have my Venturi running into this tray. I mean, I'm sure it's all added, all beneficial, but at the same time it kind of goes back to aquarium techniques, to where, you know, if you beat the water too much, you beat the CO2 out of it, which, you know, doesn't allow you to grow plants in the water. Plants actually need CO2 to grow in the water. The only non-organic thing I actually use in my garden right now, I'm always open to suggestions, critiques, criticism, anything you guys want to tell me, you know, add to my system. The only inorganic thing I use to my system is this right here. pH down. I use the, you know, cheap, crappy General Hydroponics pH down. I've tried citric acid, stuff like that, to bring my pH down. Colorado has kind of high pH in our water here, but it just doesn't really cut it. It stresses the fish, and it doesn't, I mean, not that the General Hydroponics won't stress the fish if you overdo it. You just get a lot more swing with the citric acid. The phosphoric acid just brings it down and keeps it down with, you know, maybe 2 treatments max. You know, I try to pre-treat my water before I add it. Not always though. I mean, generally if you have a good soil mix and it's, you know, got enough pH balancing amendments in it, you're not going to get too much. I mean, you know, with your harvest cycles, they're not too terribly long. You know, you're not going to get too much buildup. The one thing is you do want to kind of keep your gravel bed neutral, or else it will, you know, start to get acidic over time, or, you know, if your water's too hard, get too hard over time. But generally, even, you know, after a couple of years, they'll begin to get acidic. That's about it for right now. I'll post another video, pros and cons. I'll get to my bloom room, a bunch of different stuff. This is probably all I'll do tonight. But just try to download these, and any questions, feedback, criticism,